Okay, we'll get started now. We are at the National Institutes of Health, and so we have 4 different people here from different institutes at National Institutes of Health. What we will do is I'll give a quick overview of the National Institutes of Health SPR STTR program, and then we'll each talk about our specific institutes, like what we do, what are some of the programs, and then we'll just take your questions. So that's sort of the plan for the next 50 minutes. Before we start, how many of you are with startups? Just pretty much all of you. And any one of you have SPR STTR award? Has anyone applied? Some of you, okay. Great, so yeah, our goal is to sort of give overview of what the program is like, and also, give you, if you have any questions about, hey, how do I succeed? I mean, we don't have any magic pill, but we can give you advice on, like, what are some of the ways you can make the application better, how can you succeed?
So next year we're going to be in this room, and every one of you is going to raise your hand when he says who has an SPR.
Yep.
That's our goal.
Okay, so as I said, so we're from 3 different institutes, but representing 4 different institutes. So Todd will talk about it when he gets to speak, like who he's representing. But I'm at National Cancer Institute. Maureen is with National Institutes on Aging. Mike here is with National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, and Todd is at NCI. He'll soon be at National Institutes of Aging, and then today he's representing National Institutes of Neurological Disorder and Stroke, NINDS. So as I just said, NIH is not just one institute, there are 27 different institutes and centers. So when people say NIH, they might just think like, oh, it's just one institute, but there are 27 separate institutes. So some of the things are similar in those institutes, but a lot of things are very different. So one piece of advice is whenever you're applying or thinking of going to NIH, always really figure out which institute you'll be going to and try to talk to people in that institute, because things differ. And there's nothing preventing you from going to multiple institutes. So if you have a platform technology that can work in different institutes, then you can always go to different institutes. So the 4 ones that I outlined are the ones we'll talk about those 4 institutes in a little more detail later on. So SPR STTR is a congressionally mandated program. Any federal research agency that does R&D by law has to have a small portion of the budget go out to small businesses. So that's 3.2% for SPIRs and 0.45% for STTRs now. So it's about like 3.7% of NIH budget goes out to startups. And that comes to about $1.7 billion in fiscal year 2018. So that's a big chunk of money that is going to startups. So NIH is probably the largest seed funding agency in the life sciences sector. And different agencies, based on their budget, has different budget for the SPR STTR programs, as you can see here in the pie chart. In terms of eligibility, who qualifies? So if you're thinking, hey, can I apply for that? If you are an organized for-profit institution based in the US, then you are eligible, and the definition of small is not so small, it's 500 people. So most of the startups definitely fall into that category. Work must be done in the US with few exceptions. So if you are thinking of getting the SPR and doing work in another country, then usually it won't qualify. And the company has to be more than 50% owned by US individuals and independently operated. There was a change a few years ago where now even if you are funded by VC, as long as it's funded less than 50% is owned by just one VC. So it's not majority owned by just one VC, then you still qualify. So you don't need to think like, oh, I have VC money already, I don't qualify for SPIR. So as long as you are not majority owned by one, you can apply. In terms of the kinds of awards, so what do we fund? It's called a 3-phase program, but it's the 3rd phase is more of the idea is commercialization, where private sector takes over or the product gets to the market. The first 2 phases, so there is a phase 1 where it's more feasibility studies early on. You can apply for, so I have here different caps. So the guideline is 150K over 6 months, but then NIH has a waiver for, ignore that 1, it's 225, sorry. It's not 1.2 million, it's 225,000. for NIH, and then certain institutes, in fact, most of the institutes have some sort of waiver, so you can go above that limit. So at NCI, you can go up to 300,000. I know at NINDS, they do like 400, 500,000 award, like that are much larger. Different institutes have different waiver caps, so always talk to the institute and figure out like what that is, so you apply for that amount. And then once you do that, then you can apply for phase 2, where it's more full R&D kind of work. And that one is up to 1.5 million, and certain institutes have waivers, so at NCI it's 2 million, at other institutes some of that amount might be a little higher. And we also have this mechanism where you can apply for both phase 1 and phase 2 at the same time. It's called fast track, so you submit both applications together, it gets reviewed together, so if you get the money, then you don't have to reapply for that phase 2 part. And also we have a mechanism called direct to phase 2, which will more than likely come back in January submission. With that one, you can apply directly to phase 2 without having a phase 1. So if you are a little further along already, have already done most of the feasibility studies, then you can just come in and apply only for phase 2 part of the award. Then we have this award called Phase 2B Bridge Awards. Certain institutes participate in that. I know NCI does, NHLBI does, and Aging doesn't have it. But with that one, once you have that phase 2, and you still need to do some more work before you either like can really generate investment or can get to the market or get to the clinic, there is this mechanism where you can apply for more funding. And at NCI, that's up to $4 million. And at NCI, there is a strong encouragement to get matching funds. So if we give you $4 million, we expect that you will have raised $4 million from outside sources. At NHLBI, I think it's $3 million, and it's like also encouraged that there's matching.
It's actually required.
Or required. Funding opportunities. So there are a lot of different funding opportunities. The two major ones that I've highlighted is the omnibus solicitation is where it's investigator initiated. So it's your idea, whatever your company is working on, as long as it fits within the mission of NIH, you can apply. So that solicitation you can apply 3 times a year, January 5th, September 5th, and April 5th. Then there is also contract solicitation where the topic is a little more defined by NIH. And with that one, if your company is working on something and you look at the topic and it fits the scope, then it's a good topic to apply. That usually just once a year, and the deadline for this current cycle is October 22. So there are almost 50 or 70 topics from different institutes out there right now. So definitely take a look, and if your company is working on something that's very related to the topic, I would encourage you to apply for contracts. And then there's specific programs that are targeted funding opportunities. So for example, Aging has Alzheimer's disease and related dementias funding. So if you are working on Alzheimer's, definitely apply, because they do have, Congress has set aside a lot of funds for Alzheimer's, and they do need good quality applications. So if you're working on Aging, definitely talk to Maureen, and she can help you out with how the application process works and guide you through the process. There is also the HEAL initiative, so addiction-related research. So Congress has set aside money for that as well. BRAIN initiative was started a few years ago, and that's again focused on neurological disorders and neuroscience. Cancer Moonshot again started a few years ago, so they set aside funding for certain cancer research. So, and there are many more fundings like this. So definitely go to NIH's website and look at all the grants that are available right now and see which one you would qualify for. Benefits of funding. So like I said, it's one of the largest seed funds, early stage life sciences seed fund in the US. Not a loan, we don't take any stake, we don't take anything, so it's non-dilutive funding, so it's always good to have that. When you go to investors, they like seeing that you have like non-dilutive funding, but also that NIH review process, seeing that you have already been validated by NIH, investors tend to like it. So when you have that NIH funding and you're going to investors, you can always say, hey, we're rated by NIH and they liked it, so that really looks good on you. IP are retained by small businesses, and then you can then attract other investments and support. And it's more than just dollars, so there are a lot of different commercialization support programs. So, some of the ones I would mention is there is an I-Core program, it's entrepreneurship training program, and C3I programs. They're quite similar, and so if you have an NIH award, then you can apply for those programs. Even if you are not small businesses, certain programs, if you are like say in academia, you can apply for some of those as well. There is, for phase one, there is a niche assessment program where NIH will do market research for you. So you can get like some sort of market research. You want to get it done, they will do it and give you the report. I mentioned the entrepreneurship training program. For phase 2B, there is commercialization accelerator program where you'll work with some sort of mentor for a number of months and go over if you have like some regulatory reimbursement strategy or commercialization plan, they'll help you with that. And then we also provide a lot of partnering opportunities. So we have built relationship with lots of investors and strategic partners where we then send you to meet with investors. So at this meeting, there are 5 companies from NCI and I believe 4 companies from NHLBI who we paid for them to come here, and they are being showcased and they will get to meet with investors. So we do that with companies that are doing well and they are trying to meet with investors. We try to connect them with so they can get the follow-on funding, because we're very well aware that the funds we provide are not going to be enough to get to the commercialization stage. Okay, so what we'll do now is each of us will talk a little bit about each institute, give overview, and then we'll take Q&A after that. So I'll start with NCI. A lot of things are similar with NCI compared to like other institutes. One thing that's somewhat different is the SPR program at NCI is centralized. So everything is managed within a central office. So we manage both the grant aspect, the science. We also manage all the programs and initiatives we run. So there are specific program officers who are assigned to they have different areas that they focus on, and they can give you feedback on both the commercial aspect, the scientific aspect, and all of that. So in terms of funding, the omnibus solicitation, we do that contract. Right now there are 15 contract topics that are out there in the street. So definitely, if you're working on cancer, take a look and see if any of these contract topics are very related to what your company is doing. We have a solicitation on developing innovative molecular analysis technology. There is one on cancer prevention, diagnosis, and technology development for low resources setting, and there are many more. So I would encourage you to go to our website, spr.cancer.gov, and then look at what funding opportunities are active right now. And there's also a place to receive updates. If you just put your email address, every once or twice a month, you will receive email with like new funding announcements, any new programs we have, that we are up to date with what's going on at NCI. This is our portfolio right now. This is from 2017. And we are technology agnostic. We fund, as long as it's cancer-focused technology, we'll fund it, as long as the technology is good. And so it's like about 35 to 40% is therapeutics. We have devices, imaging agents and devices, diagnostics, research tools, digital health. So it's across the board. At any given time, we fund around 400 projects. And last year, the money that we gave out was about $160 million. So that's a big amount of money every year that we can give out to startups. And besides funding, there are a bunch of different resources and support we provide. So guidance, mentoring, we are willing to talk to you before application. Definitely reach out to a program director and talk to them about your specific aims. They will give you feedback on like, hey, this aim makes sense, you should change this, you tend to like this. So it really helps refine your application and make it stronger. We organize a number of translational resources workshops where we bring in different translational resources in one place. So we had a workshop in May this year, and we had people from FDA, people from CMS, people from investment community. They came and talked about different things you need to do to get to that stage. Companies then also got to meet one-on-one with these people, so it was really helpful. We do a peer learning and mentoring webinar, so we usually get some of our successful companies talk about their experiences so that other companies can learn from them, so we do that every few months. There are a few targeted workshops, so we did one in 2016 on targeted radiotherapy because we had a number of companies working in that space, so we brought in people from DOE, people from FDA, and come and talk about like that specific topic. Application assistance program, it was piloted last year where if you have never received SPIR award from NIH, then you are eligible to apply and you get more additional support to help you through that application process. And investor initiative, so I mentioned earlier, we every year we have application open and all our companies are eligible to apply. This year we had 100 companies that applied. It's a written pitch deck. Then it gets reviewed by a network of investors and strategic partners who review them, and then they will let us know like, hey, these 25, 30 companies are really primed to go and present to investors. Then we provide pitch coaching, we help them with the registration, and then they can go and like pitch and talk to investors. And the idea is that that will help them receive follow-on funding. We also on ad hoc basis make connections our companies with investors. We create our investor book every year with all our investment companies that we highlight. And we work with investors and we share the abstracts of the companies that we have currently funding, and they get to see all of that. So a lot of investments do come out of these interactions. So like I said, spr.cancer.gov, sign up for updates, and if you have any questions, if you want to apply, if it's cancer focused, do not hesitate to reach out. If you go to our website, it will list all the program directors' email addresses, and you can just email and say, hey, I want to talk. Or after the talk, like I can give you my card and you can reach out to me as well. That's NCI. We'll move on to aging next. Maureen.
Good morning, everyone. When you came in, you should have found a little flyer like this and another little handout. So I'm not going to go into all the individual SBIRs. If you have any questions about the SBIRs that I posted on this, there's an information area down here. You can follow up later if you're too busy. Otherwise, I'll hang around afterwards, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions. So, if you have a big idea about an innovation, a tool, a technology, an intervention, a solution, something that can help our growing, aging population age in place more cost effectively, a diagnostic tool that can help a clinician better diagnose whatever the problem is, we want to talk to you. We know that small business is the solution provider. Large pharma is stepping back and becoming more cautious. And so, our leadership recognizes that small business, you're more agile, you can move more nimbly. So, as you'll see on this specific postcard that I gave all of you with our website, our email address, and yes, a phone number with a real live person on the other end that will answer your questions. We want to help you turn your idea into a product or service that will improve the health and well-being of Americans. So I'm here today with my colleagues to encourage you as small businesses and entrepreneurs to help us step outside the box and come up with a preventive tool, a diagnosis method or tool, a treatment, better way to provide care, not just to the patient, but to assist the caregivers. Maybe a new analytical tool, an app on a phone, a mobile technology. Somebody out there had a phone a watch that I was looking at for use in a hospital. Maybe rethink that as a tool that maybe a caregiver can use. Novel devices. You have these incredible abilities and we need your help. Right now, Congress has mandated NIH to find a solution to Alzheimer's by 2025. That will not happen without your help. So they've been providing continuous increasing amounts of funding. Just even this summer, we got more funding. And so our funding for small business has increased by 300% in the last 5 years, and there will be more to come. This is one of the top 5 killers of our population that does not have an actual ability to be diagnosed competently, and we have no therapy, no cure. So we need your help. So if I could get that across to you, maybe think about chasing an aging therapy or drug or technology, or consider Alzheimer's or related dementia. The other thing I wanted to let you know is if you're not quite sure which institute that your particular idea might work for, we do have a general one that you can apply to, and they will help. They have a scientific team that will help figure out which institute to send your idea to. And with the National Institute on Aging, because of the Alzheimer's money, we have waivers. We can increase the amount of money beyond the standard amount. We also partner across NIH with other institutions and other institutes and make sure that if it looks like something that might work for Alzheimer's, if you even mention that, we will consider it. So think about those things. I also wanted to mention a really important tool. It's called the NIH Reporter. So if you have a concept and you just wonder, has anybody else thought of this idea? You can search this awesome database of anyone who's won an award from NIH. Just Google NIH Reporter. And you can use text. They have a text box, they have a zip code. If you know a PI, you can throw the PI's name in there, and everything will pop up. Since we've been apparently giving the grants, as I understand it, it's a comprehensive database that does have all of any research institution or small business that's won an SBIR funding from us. So that's something to consider, so you can look at who a potential collaborator might be, because your science has to be strong. It has to be strong, so you need to be thinking about, if you don't have a scientific partner to help you build that scientific piece, you really need to be looking at one. You may be great at building a business, you might be a serial entrepreneur, but the science piece has to be strong. We're looking for more small businesses and better quality applications. So as a result, we want to partner with you. As Shem was mentioning, we also are going to be available throughout the process. When you have a concept, yes, we want to talk to you at the concept phase. We may even put you in touch with the program officer. They do want to talk to you, and these program officers are scientists at the cutting edge. They're engaged in the very latest research. They present on panels, they run labs. They're really engaged in their science, and I think that's important to remember. This isn't just a bureaucracy, it's actually a group of scientists working on a campus with real labs and real-time work in this field, and they are a resource for you. Those are the key points I wanted to hit on today regarding the program officers, the NIH Reporter tool. We have links to resources. We're constantly trying to streamline the process. If you run into a problem, please get in touch with one of us. We want to know if something's difficult. We want to try to fix that.
Okay, thanks, Maureen. Mike is going to talk about NHLBI next.
Good morning. I'm with the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, and as the name describes, we are interested in technologies and innovations to detect, diagnose, and treat heart, lung, blood, and secretly sleep as well. Disorders and diseases. We are the third largest by funding at the NIH, with a roughly this FY17 of $110 million available for SBIR and STTR funding. In kind of contrast to the centralized model of the NCI, we have a hybrid model where we have an office dedicated to supporting SBIR applicants and grantees with services, but then the actual award is managed by the program directors within each of the divisions where they are the subject of expertise. And so a large part of my job is to speak to applicants and provide guidance on the process, help them navigate through the bureaucracy a little bit and so by the time that they get to apply, that the reviewers are looking more at the science and the innovation and less about how the grant is written and kind of all those steps. And in that, we've developed a series of resources that are available to the general public. We have a YouTube channel, the Small Biz Hangout, where we've done about 20 videos to help applicants understand the full the process and help them develop kind of the commercialization component of their award. And in addition to the guidance we provide to our actual funded awardees, we have a suite of product development services. And this can range from a consultation with one of our regulatory consultant, our business development specialists, or one of our entrepreneurs and residents who are recruited from industry to help provide that industry perspective to our awardees. And in addition to just one particular problem with like the product development pipeline, we have a more in-depth pitch coaching network of mentors who help with pitch coaching, and we send companies to Resi and other types of companies to help them get out there and meet the people that will help them succeed both in the SBIR funding phase, but then help them progress beyond the SBIR funding to develop their product. And on the right is a breakdown of our current portfolio. We have about 250 companies that we fund at any given time. And of course, the biggest part is therapeutics. We have a fairly large presence of diagnostics, and a growing component of our portfolio is health IT. We've seen many more companies in the health IT space both reach out to us, but then also apply. So that's something that's growing. And all of these services are, of course, freely available to you. And at the sbir.nih.gov/NHLBI website is a list of all the services and a very brief, simple form that you can fill out if you want more information or to speak to one of us. We just ask for a company's name and a brief request of what types of services you want. And we usually get back to you within 40 to 72 hours and assign you to either myself if it's a general inquiry or to one of our specialists if it's a more in-depth business need. And I'm happy to speak to any and all of you after this meeting.
Thanks, Mike. So next we have Todd Heim. It's a little complicated. So he is at NCI right now. He will soon be at Aging, but today he's going to be talking about NINDS.
Yeah, so we're all the NIH, and I think that's the important message there. So first of all, thank you all of you for coming. I always tell my wife, people actually volunteered to sit in the room and hear me speak. Doesn't believe me, so thank you. You know, a few things. One, I'll talk about NINDS, and then I realized during the other remarks that there's probably some burning questions that all of you have about applications, and we want to allow time. But before we do that, I'll probably kind of give you my top hits of frequently asked questions that we hear and try to get to some of the things you need to know, again, from an NIH-wide perspective. So talking about the NINDS small business programs, you know, it is similar to the other institutes. Unfortunately, Stephanie, who manages that program, could not be here, but her email address is on the bottom right of this slide, and she would be happy to take any inquiries if you want to email her afterwards. She's definitely accessible. There's, if you go to the next slide, there's a broad range of funding opportunities. NINDS does offer multiple funding opportunities for different stages of development, and that's something that's somewhat unique to NINDS, where if you're a clinical stage company, you would have one specific funding opportunity versus a preclinical would be a different funding opportunity. So with NINDS, it's really important that you really go and look at all the different opportunities. Many of them are not just SBIR, but then they'll have an SBIR component. So the funding opportunities do tend to be a higher number and more specific in nature, and there really is something for, you know, anything relating to neuroscience. One of the questions that often comes up is relating to Alzheimer's disease and which institute runs that. So if it's things about the underlying biology, which is probably less on the SBIR side in reality, that would go to NINDS often. But if it's questions, if it's translational and even sometimes biology as well, then that would go to a National Institute of Aging. So in the SBIR side, it's almost all National Institute of Aging because those tend to be more translational in nature. The other thing to mention is that a lot of the NINDS funding opportunities are cooperative agreements and are milestone driven. And that NINDS will provide, again, both funds and resources, which as Steve mentioned is kind of an NIH-wide theme today. So next slide, Steve? Yeah. Oh, great. So I wanted to highlight two specific initiatives with significant set-aside funding where NINDS is really looking for applications. The first one will be the BRAIN initiative, which is the development of novel tools and technologies for neuroscience research. And the second, which is funded by both NINDS and NIDA, the National Institute for Drug Abuse, is the HEAL initiative, and that's helping to end addiction long term. And the idea is to prevent addiction through enhanced pain management and improve treatments for opioid disorders. So definitely, if you're in these areas, please look at these initiatives. We are looking for applications in those spaces as well. And one final note that and of course, it's not limited to these two things. NINDS, as I said before, is interested in other areas. And then a final note Stephanie asked me to mention is that NINDS is looking to hire new program directors and program managers, including in the SBIR space. If any of you are kind of entrepreneurs and looking to consider life in the government on the other side, there will be through USA Jobs an announcement that's NIH-wide for program officers, and they'll be looking at the applications that come through that. So you're definitely encouraged to apply. That will open up on September 17th. So I'll transition now and just spend a couple minutes talking about your application and talking a little bit NIH-wide. So, every application, as Asim mentioned, does go through peer review. In terms of making your application the most competitive, a couple things that really important to think about. One is, what is the competitive advantage? How is this different? And Maureen mentioned the reporter database. That's a large reason why that reporter database is important. Have an understanding of what else is out there, including what else NIH has funded, so that you can make a case for why yours could be better. And then the next step to that is, you may not know yours is better, so why are the experiments you're proposing going to be able to tell you that, and tell the NIH that, and show that it's actually better? One of the probably biggest things when we look at summary statements and what drives down scores is the approach section and the models you use and the experiments you choose to do. So really spending a lot of time on focusing that approach is very important. A big question that we ask, at least at the NCI, and I would guess that this is NIH-wide to a large degree, when we're considering which phase ones to fund, we're thinking about, well, at the end of this phase one, will we know enough to make a decision on a phase two, which could be up to $2 million? So you really want to make sure that that phase one is answering those pivotal questions. If you go and you talk about your technology to 5 different people, and 4 out of the 5 ask you, wait, but wouldn't it do this? Isn't that an issue? Then maybe that's what you want to show in the phase one, because then that's going to be a problem then at the phase two stage too. So think about it in that way. Asim mentioned a little bit the rules about what % of the budget needs to go to the small business. I know that we're in an era of virtual companies, so there is some flexibility there, and it does depend on the institute and how kind of these percentages are defined and what counts as a small business part and doesn't. So my advice there is definitely talk to the institute to figure out how they do it and what their levels of flexibility, but most institutes do have some flexibility, so definitely talk to them before you apply. I noticed that most of you, when we did the hands in the beginning, mentioned that you don't have an award yet. So for new startups, it's important to know one of the review criteria is facilities. So the score will be dependent on if you have the right facilities, do the work, but you don't need to be in that facility at time of application. But what you should do then is have a letter of support from the incubator stating this will be my facility. And then you can essentially get credit for that in your application. And the last thing I'll say is that, we are here to talk to you before you apply. Most institutes at NIH will be glad to see a specific games page. We get hundreds of requests the weeks before the deadline, so to make sure we have time to look at it, send it a month before. But then you can actually have a call with one of the program officers, and they can provide real guidance before you apply on how to make it more competitive. So please take advantage of that. And let's open up to questions.
Yeah, so kind of related to that, so the stories start early, so don't start the application process a month before. Like, it takes time, you need to do a bunch of registrations, you need to then write a good application. So definitely start early so you have enough time to do it. Okay, questions?
Actually, I wanted to add on just quickly to what Ashim was saying. So 2 things. Yesterday was one of our deadlines. And literally, I opened up my computer last night, and just all this stuff was, crazy stuff from companies that missed the deadline. Why? Because their internet was down. Not going to work. So to Todd's point, start out earlier, and you may have an awesome conversation after you've spoken to us and we've connected you with a program officer. They might surprise you. They may say, wow, you've thought about your commercialization plan, you're that far along. Think about Fast Track. I spoke to a company a month ago that hadn't listened to the advice and was more cautious and applied for phase one, and in actual fact, too late in realized, gee, we could be further along if we had done Fast Track. So that is an important step to take, to reach out to us and let us connect you with the program officer.
Okay.
Todd mentioned something about getting point. I understand there is a point system. Can you help us understand what are the elements of that point
Sure.
system?
Sure, so the way the peer review process will work, and this is for grants, which is the vast majority, there are, as Steve mentioned, some contracts, that's a different scoring system. But for grants, which is the omnibus that most of you will be applying to, what will happen is, it's actually the lower the better. I don't know why, don't ask me that. But it's, 1 to 9, so 1 is amazing. 9 you don't ever want to see. And everything will go to at least 3 reviewers ahead of a meeting. So those 3 reviewers will each provide criterion scores on the 5 review criteria, which are significance, innovation, approach, environment, which is mainly facilities, and team. And I should note with team, people often focus on the PI. A lot of the concerns with the team are usually other pieces of the team that might be missing. So I'll give you an example that's probably in 20% of the summary statements that I've read. I do mostly therapeutics to date. Is biostatistician. A lot of the projects that I funded are all using animal models to test drugs. Well, then they don't have a biostatistician, even as a consultant. And then the reviewers will go and say, well, they're going to need to look at the power calculations for data, and there's no biostatistician. That could have been solved if they would have brought one on as a consultant for 6 hours. So, there are simple things that you can do for each of these criteria. What will then happen is the review officer will tabulate all those scores, and they'll take the bottom 50%, and they'll say, due to time, unless any of the reviewers disagree, we're not going to discuss these at the meeting. And then those will not get funded, and they won't get a final score. You'll still get a summary statement that has the comments from those 3 reviewers. For the top 50%, they'll get discussed by the full review committee, which is usually at least 20 people. And then at the end, all 20 people will be asked to give a single number that in their mind represents all the 5 scores. So it's not really they don't give 5 scores and it's an average. It's really a single number that they feel kind of in their head is a representation of the whole project. Did I miss anything in that?
No, I think we covered it.
No. I think the virtual company piece is really important. And the other part is STTR. If some of your research is being done at a university, as long as the majority of your company, as long as the majority of the work is being done in your company, then you can do the SBIR. But for example, with NIA, we do also have STTRs.
Yeah, there.
Question, why the viewers are anonymous? Why they don't provide the name for viewers?
So the roster is public, but doesn't say which reviewer it is. Some of it has to do with you want the frank, good reviewer feedback, and if you have names, usually they don't feel comfortable doing it. So
Actually, quite opposite is true. 2 of reviewers for our program provide opinion opposite to one of NIH. And when I contact the institute asking why would they, this is the official opinion of the NIH, they said, it's not me who selected the reviewers. I think reviewers would be much more careful if their name will be published, because they will know that they will not, basically I don't believe anybody will submit any review which NIH should disagree with in official statements.
Yeah, so I think there are some conflict of interest there's some ways that, you might get the same review again on a resubmission, and then that gives, that opens up a door, well, what if this person tries contacting them to get in their favor? So there are a number of issues, but what I can say is that there has been a process ongoing for the last 18 months to take a very deep look at the SBIR, at the peer review process at NIH for SBIR, and realizing that it may not be, it was really designed to be peer review for academic research and not for SBIR, and then was basically used for that purpose. So we're really taking a close look and say, how can we make this optimal for SBIR? And there was a committee, I sat on it myself, we made recommendations, NIH leadership are currently looking at those recommendations. So I'm hopeful that in the future we'll be able to make some I don't know that that'll change, but I think we'll be able to make some other concrete changes that will make peer review more optimal for SBL.
And one other piece to add is, so we do use peer review in making the funding decisions, but the program usually also use some sort of judgment, like, we'll look at some of the applications that are like maybe a little higher score, but if they merit to be funded, then we fund some of those like that are outside what we call the pay line. So we do factor in, like, sometimes, there might be disagreement between 2 or 3 different reviewers, so we do factor in things like that. But peer review is like, what Congress has mandated that NIS like applications have to go through, so that's going to stay, but it's just making it optimal is what we're trying to do.
And I think what we're also trying to say is, you're getting some really valuable feedback in that peer review. Take that and reapply. This isn't like you get one shot at it. You can keep
I
trying.
understand, but they basically what said, we are a virtual company, as many companies now are virtual.
Yes.
And the program will try and develop extremely simple and actually will save American taxpayers a lot of money. Because basically we trying to use natural occurring enzyme.
So since it's specific, let's talk about it afterwards, because let's ask, have more general questions, but
yes,
we can.
But here it is. We applied to NICA because it's a virtual company. They said, no, you apply to NIAA. And I, as recommended, contacted NIAA, and they don't have virtual company model. They only say that our company have to take the most of the money. I want to take most of the money for myself, but it's not possible. But in our case, the most money will go to company which creates this enzyme. And we need to outsource it because equipment costs 10 times more than the program itself.
Yeah, it is.
And they
institute
say, no,
specific.
we don't have this policy, and that's the end of story, we cannot apply.
That's for
to it.
NIA?
No,
You said?
no, not NIA. We work with
NIA.
virtual companies. It's NIAA, she said.
Alcohol.
Oh, yes, NIA.
And
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
we're not changing process,
And
and we cannot
what-
apply it to it.
One thing important for everyone is, while I said there is some flexibility, it does depend on the institute, so definitely you need to talk to them. But also for all institutes, even if they have flexibility, I do not write the word virtual in your application. We provide some flexibility, but we technically by law, we can't fund virtual companies. So do us a favor and don't make our jobs harder by calling yourselves virtual.
No, we're not. We just want
yeah.
to pass the funding to the companies which do the most of the work.
No,
and
we
have
get it.
equipment.
Hopefully, there'll be some flexibility in the future. And SBA is looking at this and how they could change it government-wide.
Earlier you mentioned that matching funds through external investment was a requirement in some cases. Could you clarify what stages and how that works?
So for phase 1 and phase 2 award, you don't need it at all. So most of the award are phase 1 and phase 2. So for those, you don't need matching fund. You come in, you apply, it's just on the merit of your application. Phase 2B application, which is the one like after, which is called bridge awards, usually to help you like cross that valley of death, so-called. So for that one, certain institutes require matching funds. So not all institutes require it. Some institutes strongly encourage it. Your application will be much stronger if you have it. Certain institutes require it. So it's only for that phase 2B mechanism.
And at NIA, we have extensions to phase 2. We don't have phase 3, we have extensions to phase 2.
So is it a milestone-based accomplishment? Or is it lump sum funding? And what is the overall time period for an application? You mentioned fast track, so there's obviously not a fast track. So what is fast track timing and what is the non-fast track timing, please?
Mike, do you haven't talked to you.
So fast track is phase 1 and phase 2 together.
Okay.
And so that's very much a milestone-driven application. So you have to have clear aims for the phase 1 component and say by the end of the phase 1, I will have these data points. And those are actually very essential to be clear and defined because you will not receive the phase 2 funding until those are met. And they have to be measured. The program officer then can turn on the funds for the phase 2 part.
So when you're talking about timeline, I don't know if you mentioned like the time of the award or from application to award. So those are two different things, right? So from application to award at NCI, we did an analysis. It's average of about 7 months. So when you apply to when you get the award. So it can be a little shorter, it can be a little longer based on which cycle you apply for. That's going to be the same even if it's like phase 1 fast track or phase 2. So for Fast Track, what happens is you apply for both at the same time. You do your phase 1 work, and then as long as you meet your phase 1 go, no go milestones, then you just get your phase 2 money after that. Certain institutes are a little more strict about milestones, where they say if you don't meet it, we're going to cut you off, you're not going to get any more phase 2 funds. Certain institutes are more relaxed and they will give you those phase 2 funds. The other question you asked was about milestones, so that's sort of related, like for phase 1 or phase 2, any other. So most institutes, when you apply for phase 2 and you're doing the work, as long as you put an effort, you do the work, because we fully are aware, like sometimes things don't work in research. So they won't just cut it down, like cut the funding saying, oh, it just didn't work, we're not giving you the money, as long as you put effort in, you do it. Certain institutes are a little more strict in terms of you have to meet the milestone to get that next part of money.
So is it a monthly payment, or is it a one-time check, or how does it work?
So it's different based on the mechanism. For grants, usually it is, I think, you get some money at the beginning and then like sort of towards the end, or you draw down as you use it. For contract, it's a little different. For contract, it's like in set timing, and you have to provide like the receipts, or like, say this is what we're going to do, and then you get money for that. Cooperative agreement is somewhere in between.
So, as he mentioned, 7 months to apply, so you could make the argument that a fast track would save you 7 months in between. It's usually a lot longer, and this is another thing important to say, which is that's if everything runs smoothly, you have the application day at the right time, and you get your phase 2 or your phase 1 on the first try. Over 90% of the time, that doesn't happen. So resubmissions are a key part of the process, and it's really important that you understand, every day we have companies that get top scores on a resubmission, that their first submission was unscored, which is that bottom 50% that didn't get a final score. So it's really important not to be discouraged by your first submission not getting scored. The reviewers, they look for specific things, and it often is not that your technology is bad, it's that you didn't put the right things in the application or frame them in the right way. And that's where working with program is critical, because you'll be assigned someone on that summary statement that you can then talk to. And when people used to come to me, I would say, I don't even want to talk to you until you draft a response to the reviewer concerns, because then we can have much more valuable conversation. Then we can really talk about, okay, here's the concerns you're addressing and here's what you're really missing. So that I make sure that when you're ready to put that draft together for the actual resubmission, it really puts you in the strongest spot possible to get funded in that resubmission. So, don't be discouraged by even an unscored application on your first one.
I don't know if you had more to say.
No, I'll just point out that, to go on to that, we did an analysis last year of 2017 applicants, and companies that actually spoke to us either before their first submission or before their resubmission had about 25% greater chance of getting a fundable score or improving their score. So it's really important and demonstrates the value of speaking to us, because we kind of know a lot about what the reviewer is looking for. And it really benefits you to kind of do the homework up front with us.
So
One other thing I wanted to add is when you get your award, you actually, if you've kept your receipts, you actually can submit for expenses you've incurred in the prior, I think it's 60, is it 60?
90 days.
90 days. So that's another important thing to be aware of.
Do you have time for one more question?
any final question? Otherwise, we're almost out of time.
And we'll be outside if you want to
Let's
ask.
say one
Question is
more.
the budget limit, I understand, and for like 43, 44. And also, there is like a case that made aware of by your institute that you can go over the budget. So what's your opinion about it?
So, in terms of the budget cap, so you can see here, the NIS-wide cap is $225,000 for phase one.
So get the 150 out of your head. I never
Yeah.
want to hear that number again.
So don't ever look at this number up here, because NIS has this waiver already, so ignore that one. It's $225,000 for phase one, $1.5 million for phase two. And then each institute also has waiver on top of that. So for certain specific topics, so if, for example, with cancer, pretty much most of the topics would, like therapeutics, diagnostic, a bunch of those topics fall on the waiver topic. So you can go up to $300,000 for phase one and up to $2 million for phase two. Other institutes have a little different waivers. So NINDS, for example, gives much higher phase one awards. So they, I think, go up to $500,000, $600,000 even. So the moral is talk to the institute, find out which institute you'll be going to, and then find out what the waiver is, or
Yeah.
the budget cap is, and then apply for that
And the
amount.
waiver topics are actually published within the omnibus solicitation, so you can see within each institute what the waiver topics are. Like for NHLBI, they're very broad, so anything related to having to do FDA clearance qualifies for a waiver topic, right? So they're not very specific.
Most institutes are quite broad. Probably to your question, the biggest misconception I've heard over the years regarding budget is, oh, well, if I submit a smaller budget, it doesn't cost them as much, I'm more likely to get the award. That's usually quite the opposite, because when you do that, then the reviewers look and say, well, remember what I said earlier? I said when we're thinking about funding a phase 1, we're saying, will we have enough information to make the decision about phase 2 and then this award? Well, if you did a really small budget and have very few experiments, then the answer to that question will often be no. So, and the other reason why it sometimes hurts companies is because what companies will do is they'll say, I'll find a way to use other money and do this in other ways. So it might be $300,000 of work, but to get this funded, I'm only going to ask for $150,000. What happens there is the reviewers look at it and they say, there's no way this can be done for $150,000, this isn't feasible, they don't know what they're doing, and it gets a horrible score. So the most important thing in terms of competitiveness is that the budget matches the work that you're proposing.
Be realistic.
And that it meets whatever the limits of the institute that you think your application will be assigned to.
Okay, thank you so much. One thing that I want you to walk out with, if you don't remember anything, is talk to us before you apply. We'll help you with a lot of questions, prevent you from making a lot of mistakes. So thank you again so much, and we'll be here and outside if you have any questions.
Thank you, everyone.